The long-awaited Soweto Theatre School's Setworks Festival is set to kick off this week. Nobulali Productions by Children My Africa, rather, stage will spearhead the festivities as it graces the theatre's stage from the 16th to the 25th of August. This theatre piece is set in South Africa and it examines relevant issues like apartheid, race relations and the effects of European colonialism. Well, Dr. Nobulali Dangazele is the project's producer and she joins us now in studio to tell us more. Good morning, Doctor. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you. How are you?
Great, thank you. I mean, tell us about the production. What is it about overall?
My Children, My Africa is a set work that is a matric set work, but it's also a drama set work, so you don't have to be in matric to come and watch it. And essentially, it's a play that looks at how one, as a young individual, can engage on issues of apartheid as well as, classism, because it's two students debating each other from two different schools and essentially engaging on issues of the time, but looking at like gender equality, looking at themes like betrayal, but also trying to unpack what it means to be born on the different sides of a certain, social scale and socioeconomic factors that essentially differentiate us, but looking at it through the construct of a debate.
Yeah.
And also just, it's about, how one engages about integral and critical factors that are impacting us today, but also still very relevant to what's happening in South Africa right now.
And I'm curious about the children and how they respond to it, because they are also on different sides of it and the experiences are so different.
So if I could, it would be like a quadrant, right? There's the economic factor, right? So you've got your IEB schools or your private schools, and then you've got your public schools listening to how the haves and the have-nots essentially debate about these issues. And we always have a post-production conversation or dialogue that's facilitated by a qualified applied theatre facilitator that talks to them about, okay, when Mr. M was saying this, what does this theme mean to you as an individual? And then how do we translate it to what we just saw in the play? And sometimes when you engage with the learners, they start realizing that we have a lot more in common than we do differences. And we are actually, as youth, very aware of the injustices and are trying to make changes, but we do acknowledge that some of them are systemic. So I think the play is amazing, but when you have that engagement and that dialogue, it allows you to actually see, Wuti, our youth is not a lost cause. They actually are much wiser than we give them credit, but also they are aware of some of the hurdles that they need to essentially pick up as batons and run the relay that was left behind by some of the youth of 76, for example.
I'm curious, do they also come up with solutions to how we then deal with the systemic racism, for instance?
I've heard answers to some of the questions that have completely blown my mind. Where youth are saying, not only do I have solutions, but I'm actually part of a society that does X, Y, and Z. I volunteer at a children's home that's in Orlando because I have seen that I have so much. And you're like, where did this come from? And it's like, no, I mean, you watch the news, you hear about the strikes, you notice the differences, and then you need to create agency for yourself and say, how do I become the change I want to see? And you're thinking, Mara, you're 15 or you're 16 or you're 18. And it's like, ageism, Lali. Don't be an ageist, don't think just because a person is a certain age, they can't be an agent of change. I've seen young people that actually sometimes challenge us as adults, but they also challenge us as a production to also say, we are already pushing the envelope. Can we leverage some of what it is that you're doing to expedite the process? It's been phenomenal.
And what other productions are there or other is on the Soweto Theatre School's set festival? What else is there?
There's also The Island, which is being directed by Dr. John Kani, and this is like a phenomenal production. There's also Sizwe Banzi's Dead, which is also another phenomenal production. So it's productions that are mostly based in, it's protest theatre essentially, because our set work is trying to still rectify some of the social ills that came with apartheid, but we are also trying to contextualize it in like, what is it that's happening today? So yes, this was apartheid, but what does apartheid look like today? Is it potentially elements of GBV? Is it socioeconomic factors? Is it the fact that, some of us are getting a better education than others? Is it the fact that we are actually discriminating against people that don't have a certain type of accent, or didn't necessarily grow up in a certain part of a neighborhood? So we try and say apartheid maybe as a metaphor now, what does that look like in today's day and age, and how do we dismantle that system, whether it is, you know, a formal or informal one.
And you're targeting grade 10 to 12?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So the reason for that is primarily because of some of the themes that are contained in the play, the vocabulary that is used, but also it is a play that they then write exams with. So we as Shakespeareans were always creating productions to augment what it is that teachers are doing, because when we initially did our market research and our R&D, we found that teachers were saying, Yazi Nobulali ngiyakusaba presenter like a play because I've never been to a theater. So I see stage directions and they're like enter left, exit right. Like, what is that? So we even like used to bring teachers to the theater and say, okay, ma'am, so when we say stage left, it's over here. When it's upstage, we're saying this. So when you're reading this, ask the learners to stand up and move around, especially my children, my Africa. It's set in a classroom.
Yeah.
So turn your classroom into a theater by moving the chairs and placing them like this, similar to what the Greeks used to do with an auditorium. And they're like, you make this look so simple. I'm like, it is.
Yeah.
It's called a play because you're meant to play, you know, so that's why we target that group. But on Friday, I had grade 7s come in.
Yeah.
They like warmed my heart. So I was there like, okay, my gang,
Yeah.
this is what the play is about. So Tammy's this person and you know, Isabel is that person. And then, who's your favorite teacher? And they're like, Tugzin. And I'm like, okay, so imagine if Tugzin was doing this, and just giving them the synopsis allowed them to actually watch it and still understand. So the main thing that I'm trying to say is support organizations like your Acetage, like Nobulali Productions, because we are actually the limiters of what young people can do. They were grade 7s. It's a matric set work. And when they walked out, I was like, so what did you get from the place? Like, Yasmaru, Isabel, this.
Yes.
Oh, Mr. M, that. Utami, this, that. I'm like, but you're not in matric and you get it.
Yeah.
They're like, yes. And I'm thinking, okay, I need to deconstruct some of my notions of what I expect of young people, because they are a lot smarter than we give them credit.
Give them credit for. And it's very important that they read and understand this work in visual form as well.
Yes, because it's a play. I mean, I remember when I started Shakespeareans, my old high school was Monjo High, and my old high school teacher was saying, Nobulali, our students are struggling because Shakespeare speaks about thee and thou and stuff like that. And I had been to the RSC and seen how they deconstruct text and how they play with text, how they embody text, how they work as an ensemble. And I was like, ma'am, give me these kids. After 1 week, they'll get this thing.
Yeah.
She was like, under confidence. Then I was like, yep, I will. And then we spent a week with them, looking at Richard III, but now we made collages. I was like, who's Richard III in the school? You know, if you had to look at like his deformity, what is that in your life? And the kids actually took it, modernized it, came up with slogans and things like that and presented it at assembly. And that's where actually Shakespeareans was birthed, inside my old high school, through me saying, let's take the text, bring it up to life and make it something that you can actually engage with. And I think it wasn't something new. I wasn't inventing something phenomenal. It's because my English teacher, Mrs. Brown, used to stand up sometimes on a desk and start a Macbeth monologue and you're like, skip on, you know, like what's happening? And because she was so theatrical in what she did, I got a distinction in English. But it's because Mrs. Brown made English come alive.
And you're actually right, because now that I think about it, in matric, I only started understanding Macbeth properly after actually seeing the movie, watching, you know, yes, it was old at that time, but it only made sense, you know, because I mean, we've been doing the set work for the entire year, but I actually was quite lost until I actually watched it.
If anybody takes anything from this interview, it would be you can't read a play. You must stand up and perform a play, even if you're reading it alone, you know, or find like 3 to 6 people and you read the different parts, because hearing someone else's intonation of the words makes it sound completely different and you start understanding it better.
Yes.
You know, it need not be Shakespeare. It can be any play, any script, you know. I always say, if you're reading something that is meant to be performed, you need to read it and embody what it is that you do. You can't read it like it's a novel, because the author was thinking about the people moving around, you know, standing from a certain point of view and embodying the words.
Yeah.
So you can't read a play sitting. Like you cannot.
So possible.
Ladies and gentlemen, take this one thing. Please. You can't listen, you can't read a play. You need to engage with a play on your feet and through your body.
All right, so what's happening? It's the 16th to the 25th of August.
And there's 2 shows a day. There's one at 9 o'clock and one at 11, available on web tickets. 120 per individual, but 100 rand if you do a block booking of more than 10 individuals. Teachers, as gratis, teachers don't pay, because we are thanking them for what it is that they're doing in the classrooms.
All right, thank you so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
A beautiful conversation, Dr. Nobulali Dangazele, and we've been speaking about My Children, My Africa, a stage play that's set to be showcased from the 16th to the 25th of August at the Soweto Theatre. As you heard, teachers are in for free.